Some background: me, 28F, and my fiancé, 34M, have a blended family. He has 2 daughters from his previous marriage, ages 9 and 7, and I have a son from a past relationship, age 6. Shortly after the birth of his second daughter, my fiancé had a vasectomy. He and I also have a 5-month-old baby boy. His conception came as a shock to us both, and my fiancé had a sperm count done. While low, he had some viable ones. We love our son, and I couldn't imagine life without him. But my fiancé's mom has made life hell. When she found out I was pregnant, she tried to convince him I'd cheated and said he shouldn't live with me until after the birth, and he should get a paternity test. She did her own research and said it was too unlikely that we'd conceive after a vasectomy, and the more obvious choice was that I was unfaithful. My fiancé shot this down, but Mill said she refused to acknowledge our son until we get a test. I said fine, he doesn't need you. She didn't come to our shower, the hospital for the birth, or even send a card. We haven't got the test done and don't plan to. Our son looks just like his dad when he was a baby. My Mill caught wind that my parents have visited the baby recently. They live across the country and can't visit often cause COVID, and are furious. She suddenly wants to be an involved grandma, and I'm keeping her from her only grandson, and that most women would kill to have involved grandparents. I told her she needs to apologize and I need time to forgive, but she's given non-apologies, saying she was just trying to protect her son and I'd do the same if I were in her shoes. No sorry, no baby. Fiancé is getting uncomfortable with our fighting and picking sides. He is with me that she's been unacceptable, but says she'll never really apologize, and I need to compromise or this will never end. I've heard from other people that I need to be the bigger person. I'm honestly tired of the arguments too, but I can't forgive her accusations so easily. Half of his family thinks I'm a catty cheater because of her. We have reached the end of the story. Let's listen to some of the comments by our Reddit listeners. Comment 1. Tell your fiancé that she has overstepped and that it's not okay to pressure you into doing anything. If she's been like this once, something like this will happen again. She's literally defamed your entire character over an innocent situation with no regard to how it affected you, and your fiancé isn't taking this seriously enough either. Comment 2. Why wouldn't you do the test? I know if it was me, I would do it and have a smugness about me that I was right. I can see everyone's point here, but if your husband said no, she should stay in her lane, how would you feel if your partner did ask for a paternity test? If he is being worn down by her, he might ask for one. OP reply. If he asked for one, I'd be hurt, but I'd do it because I'd understand him being suspicious. We didn't get the test because the doctor explained how this, most likely, happened, and my fiancé completely trusted me. I would never cheat. I've been cheated on before by an ex, and it completely ducked me up mentally. I know that probably makes me more sensitive to being accused than most, but God, it just makes me see red. Anyways, if he and I agreed our baby is his, they are very obviously father and son. No one else has any right to ask for a paternity test, much less try and blackmail/extort/threaten one of us. So I guess it's a mix of my pride and my principles. Sis finally introduces his new boyfriend, so I came for a visit. However, I never expected he would say something like this. My sister, 26, brought her new boyfriend, 30, over to our parents' house to meet him for the first time. My wife and I came as well. We met the dude. He seemed okay-ish at first, but he then started asking weird and personal questions. My wife had a breast cancer and got a single mastectomy last year. She told the story to my sister's boyfriend, and he was like, oh. Then he stared at my wife briefly, then playfully said without even asking, I can pretty much tell which one got the blow. We were floored. My wife could barely keep a straight face. She lied so she could leave the table cause she was literally about to tear up. I just looked at the dude and said, are you serious? He said, what? I was just joking, bro. I started asking him to explain the joke to me. He just stared. I asked him again to explain it to me in details, but still got no answer. My sister asked me to stop because clearly he got uncomfortable, but I insisted he explain the joke to me cause clearly, my wife and I didn't get it. Things got awkward with him avoiding eye contact while I just stared at him the entire time. I still insisted and asked him to explain the joke right there and then, but seconds later he said he needed to step outside to make a phone call. Turns out he got in his car and left. My sister had a meltdown screaming and berating me for how I treated her boyfriend. Calling me to the hostel with anger issues to scare her boyfriend out of our parents' house. I told her he was overstepping and made my wife uncomfortable to the point of crying. She actually called me wife such a princess and said she is soft and cannot take some teasing. I had an argument with her and my parents intervened. I took my wife and left. My dad called me later and said that he understood how hurt my wife felt, but my sister's boyfriend was visiting for the first time, and I showed hostility and aggression instead of just ignoring him. He encouraged me to reach out to him and my sister later and talk it out, but I declined. Ida? Edit, my sister and my wife don't have a history, but my sister tends to see the worst in people. When my wife announced her diagnosis, my sister actually thought she was faking because the family no longer brought up my wife's miscarriage months prior. I thought that was out of line, and she apologized for it, and we moved on. My sister thinks that the only bad trait she sees in her boyfriend is his smoking habit. She says that otherwise, he's perfect. SMFH. We have reached the end of the story. Let's listen to some of the comments by our Reddit listeners. Comment 1. The just a joke, bro crowd is never funny. OP's insistence that he explain the joke is something I tend to do when confronted with that as well, and the reaction he got from the boyfriend is completely expected. Sister should be ashamed of both her taste in men and her attitude towards OP's wife. OP's family clearly enables her behavior since he got the whole "don't rock the boat" speech from dad. Comment 2. What he said was absolutely wrong, and he never should have said it. He's TAH, but you are no saint. You are clearly an aggressive person. The first time you asked him to explain it, you got your point across. The next 3 times were undoubtedly overkill. If you had let your hackles down and given him a second or two to reply, he might have apologized, but you weren't interested in that. You were pissed he hurt your wife, and I get that, but you didn't make the situation better, you just got aggressive. Parents decided to gather a family council. Without me. I just asked why and details came out shocking. So the basic background is I'm 42, 2 kids aged 14 and 12, and signed divorce papers in April after almost 2 years of being pilled out trying to get my fair share from him. The details of why are not important, but I'm angry, embarrassed, lost and sad any given moment of the day. A lot of this has to do with feeling like I've been replaced by a 23-year-old surfing instructor who is everything I'm not. My husband and kids claim that she is just his friend in helping him learn his lifelong desire to surf, but Jesus Christ, give me a break. My husband has primary custody because he had better lawyers who were able to manipulate some minor missteps on my part into the court, seeing them as a huge deal. So this past weekend I picked up the kids and said we were going to visit my parents. They said they would rather use their season passes to Sea World since they spent all weekend with my parents and Aunt Stacy and Uncle Brian, my brother and sister who I didn't even know were in town. I was like, your dad took you? They said yes, that my parents had invited him over to see everyone. I was devastated because while I don't get along with my brother and sister, and my mom, they let my ex-husband know they were coming and not me. I can't even let that sink in without tears forming. I sort of jested that, oh, and let me guess, Ms. Surf Instructor was there too? My daughter said, well, actually we all went to her house in Ocean Beach, because she gave Stacy and Brian lessons after ours. That included my mom and dad. I was so devastated I took the kids back home, and just went home and cried for an hour. When I was done I sent a furious email to my entire family how inappropriate they all had been, and then not only hanging out with my ex for an entire weekend, but his little Chippy, as well as a massive slap in the face, and the fact they didn't even tell they were in town let alone invite me makes me feel so alone. My mom was the only one to respond, and she basically said, yes, it was rude we didn't tell you Stacy and Brian were here, and we shouldn't have done that. But we didn't divorce Bradley, and we still see him as a son. This email along with your behavior over the last 5 years should really give you insight into why we might not want you at family events. In so many words, she called me an a-hole for sending the email, was I? We have reached the end of the story. Let's listen to some of the comments by our Reddit listeners. Comment 1. Probably YTA. I feel like there's some curation of information here. Reading between the lines, father has primary custody. You don't get along with your family. Following the news, you punished your kids by doing nothing with them instead of making alternate plans. Your family highlighted your behavior for over 5 years as being the problem. Time to accept some personal responsibility for your situation. Comment 2, ESH. They shouldn't have excluded you. That was crappy, and you're their child. They definitely shouldn't have invited your ex and also excluded you. Your parents and your siblings are upset with you. They have some negative feelings about things you have done. Again, with the help of a therapist, try to understand what those things are, how much is valid, and what you can own and apologize for.